kind of do some judo on this and turn it into an economic driver. LA feels the pinch along with places like Israel and Singapore, where our water prices are high enough that it's an innovation, it's a driver for innovation to find new ways to conserve. One example of this, a company I had the opportunity to work with in the mayor's office, is called Cyber Rain. And this is a company that has developed a smart sprinkler controller that connects to your wireless router in your home and will every morning check the weather through the internet and adjust your sprinklers accordingly. I got one in my house, it works great. If it's raining outside, you don't have to go out and reprogram your sprinklers, it'll turn it off for you. It's going to save about 50% of my outdoor watering. That is a technology that would not be possible without LA's water rates. There are other communities like Sacramento that has a lot of water. Two big rivers come together there. Many homes in Sacramento don't even have water meters. Everyone just pays a flat rate for water. There's no incentive there to conserve, and there's no incentive to innovate. So we are uniquely positioned on the freshwater delivery side, on the wastewater management side, and on stormwater protection, stormwater pollution control. LA is kind of at the confluence of those three water industries. And I think a little bit of focused policy around that would go a long way to get agencies like the Department of Water and Power, the Bureau of Sanitation, Metropolitan Water District to coordinate on their technology programs for the benefit of local companies.
Cheeto, thoughts on water?
Well, you know, just to mention, the City of Los Angeles and Public Works and the Community College District, they're all working together to look at the City Green Business Certification Program. It's a measurement type of project where the grant will cover the cost to measure all these things, including water usage. And in the end, a recognition on whatever company participates will be provided through the project. The hope is that because of this project, it will increase the recognition of this activity. And let's face it, it's an option. It's not a mandate right now for a lot of the companies. And so we want to give them that added visibility in the community, and hopefully it could have a positive effect on their customers, increasing participation from the public, and in the end increasing their bottom line. So if we can do that type of service underneath this grant, raising awareness for those individual companies that wish to deploy this new thing, an innovative strategy, and we can quantify the positive effects from their activities, hopefully we can work towards increasing more people, more visibility, and eventually more adoption of this practice.
Now, from our side of things, what we see is not so much the use of water or the cost to purchase water, it's the cost to dump the water. A lot of companies, especially food processing companies, they might pay for every dollar they spend buying water, they might pay $1.15 to $1.25 to dump the water. These are not just food companies, but waste disposal companies, clothes, dye houses pay $1.25 to dump their water for every dollar they spend in water. A lot of companies now want to become water neutral. Companies like Intel, you wouldn't think a microchip maker would want to become a water neutral company, but they use a lot of water to make microchips. Companies who make tuna in a can, we're working with one major company right now who wants to reclaim and reuse all of their water. So it is a big issue. In the state of Idaho, we were starting to work with a lot of potato farmers up there because their water table is down 30 feet. They're in a big drought right now. And the state has come to them and said, okay, whatever water we tell you can use, that's it. You don't get a gallon more. So they're forced, not because of necessarily the regulation, but because the water table is so low, that they have to reclaim and reuse all of their water. With our technology, they can do that. And they can use our technology not just to reclaim and reuse their water, but to use that same water to sanitize their facilities and their equipment. The same with this tuna company, same with a lot of meat packers and poultry companies we're working with now. A lot of the problems you hear with cantaloupe and listeria is because they are reusing that same water in the plants because they don't want to dump it because it costs so much to dump it. So we're working with companies like that to use our technology to clean their water. So water is a major, major issue, not just in the U.S., but all over Latin America. When we went down to Waco, the people at NSF said to us that one of our biggest markets will be Latin America, because water is such a big issue. You wouldn't think that in Brazil, right, because of the rainforest. But they have a big problem with pollution of their water. It gets down to the water table, and when they reuse that water, you know, people are getting sicker and sicker. And as far as the beaches here, you know, the runoff is a big, big problem with the contamination. And if you go out, if you're a surfer, you go out to the beach a lot, you know, you'll get a rash eventually. And we have a technology that we're working with. Once NSF gives us our seal of approval, which hopefully will be in the next 6 months, to install systems in Malibu for septic tanks. Now we can install our systems and work with Department of Water and Power for wastewater runoff. And it's endless. But water is a major, major issue, not just in this country, but all over the world.
And John?
Just a quick thought. I'm an economist. And in the last panel, when they were talking about allocating space on freeways, one of the things they're talking about is using the pricing system to cause people to do different things on the freeways. I have a whole series of water agencies that are clients of mine, and they all face the same difficulty. To a large extent, the way California tries to do things in the economy is by command and control. We order you to do something, and if you don't, we will fine you, rather than simply using the pricing system. And the fact is, water in this state is underpriced. And if the price was allowed to go up, all of a sudden you would see people doing a lot of things that we would like them to do, like use the kind of landscaping that makes sense in Victorville as opposed to a green lawn. But it's interesting to me always that the people that I meet with that really want to solve the water problem because we have a water shortage. In economics, a shortage is defined as a market with a price that's abnormally low. The price goes up, there is no shortage. And then we start getting to issues of rationing. Well, some of you are old enough to remember when we did that with gasoline. We said, let's hold the price of gasoline down in the 70s. We had out an even license plate rationing and all the rest of it, instead of just letting the price go to where it needs to go. So my instinct is that if you just let that happen, all sorts of good things would occur. Technologies we developed, behavior would change. I mean, I tend to wash my car with a hose. You know, my wife would beat me with the hose if I did it, if the price was high enough.
So, John, can I ask you a question then, since you're so into pricing and economics? How do you feel about AB 32 and the greenhouse gas regulations that would call for a cap and trade system to help California reduce its emissions?
The problem I have with AB 32 is the assumption underlying it that California by itself can change the earth. I just don't believe it. If that was national policy, I can get there. But too often I see the state alone and by itself trying to do something, hoping the rest of the world's going to join up. And what it does is it puts the state in an uncompetitive position vis-a-vis everybody else that we have to compete against. That is, cap and trade is national policy, I'd love it. Cap and trade is California only policy, that I think is an error. It goes along with us being the only state that 8 hours for overtime versus 40-hour a week. We have a whole slew of those things we do.
Well, I would say the flip side of that is, in many ways, California's leadership position predates that of other states and other countries, and we have the opportunity to create those industries here to meet that new economic reality, then that's an export opportunity we would have going forward.
If you don't drive huge numbers of jobs away from the state as a consequence of the cost competition. I go back to my original worry when I look at all of this. It's nobody in this room. It's people who don't wear suits and ties who represent 42% of our adults and who need jobs of the kind that will be destroyed are being destroyed because of the way we're managing these issues.
So with that, I'm going to open it up to the audience. And we have a gentleman right there.
I have to admit some confusion about where the conversation is going. Because what I heard at the start was...
Could you actually stand up so we could hear you?
Are you having trouble hearing me? Yes. Okay, then I'll stand around.
Okay, sorry.
Because when we started the conversation, I was hearing green jobs are a failure, government intervention to support green jobs isn't working, this whole green job thing is kind of a hoax. That's kind of what I was hearing. But then the conversation changed, and what I've heard over the last 20 minutes are several examples of how there is huge potential for green employment and green industry. But there are obstacles to it. So I'm confused as to whether this whole green thing is a bit of a ruse, or if it's actually is the future of our economy, and we're just encountering the kind of obstacles in achieving that we always encounter.
I think you're right. There's definitely some confusion. I think some of it stems from the fact that green is such a broad term, especially the way it's often bandied around in political circles. In certain industries, like water, I think LA is probably uniquely positioned in the United States to be a leader in developing these new technologies. In other industries like solar, our policies are set up such that we're going to be installing a lot of solar, but we're probably not going to be manufacturing any solar in California. And that's where you see Solyndra reflecting that kind of larger macroeconomic picture. And I think some of the challenges we talked about earlier are really challenges with manufacturing anything in California with higher electricity costs and other regulations. The flip side of that, though, is that higher electricity costs also drive innovation on energy efficiency and renewables. So I think you're right to be confused. It's a complicated subject, and there will be winners and losers on the company level, but also kind of on the industry level. Water may be a winner, solar may be a loser.
Let me take a shot at that. I think green is an enormously important thing going forward. But you've got to put in place a policy framework that makes sense to get there. Just declaring we're going to create green jobs, but leaving in place a good deal of what we've been doing up until now isn't going to get you there. That's why I was talking about some of the policy changes I'd like to see to get us there. But they really mean taking on issues that right now aren't even on the table.
Did you address me on that?
Well, just a comment. There was a lot of confusion throughout the community college system, and LACCD, we were all part of so many discussion when it came down to what was green, what kinds of jobs related to green, who are the companies that were green, is cosmetology versus solar. I mean, there was so much confusion, and for us, we're wanting to figure what was the magic bullet. What we found out after a year's worth of activity and a lot of millions of dollars secured for the Los Angeles region, we were very happy to secure that. However, when it came down to it, we have to look at the holistic company. The green movement to us is that, it's a very good topic. It's increasing in recognition, but still, as I mentioned before, it's still an option for some. And so once it becomes, so expensive to do certain things, that's where you get into, behavioral changes. From the community college system, we want to be going for the best and most probable potential for success for a lot of people to get jobs. That's what we're looking for. Is it green, or is it, if you take the green layer off, is it increasing the potential job order for a company that just happens to offer green products? I think the latter is more true, because we missed the boat when it came down to all those proposals focusing in on the solar technician, as I mentioned before. If we were focusing on more of the house than just the technician side, we might have done a better job at the very beginning. I think we're doing the job now that we should have been doing a year and a half ago.
I have another question.
Another question from the audience. If you could stand up so we can all hear you.
I am standing.
All right.
investing their money in public goods with people like Cheeto, rather than investing it to create private benefits for companies like yours?
That's a great question, and there's kind of two approaches of the way government can invest money to help spur new industries. You can give it on the producer side or on the consumer side, and we tend to do both. In some ways, government policy affects consumer behavior through things like increases on gas taxes. So gas taxes drive people to conserve gas, things like that. But we also have to make certain bets on technologies because we have to get those companies over the hump. I think it would probably be a better approach if we had a economy-wide system of taxes and fees that represented the negative public externalities of consumption, fuel consumption, water consumption. Then you're not picking any winners on either companies or technologies, but you're letting the market dictate that. In the absence of a robust greenhouse gas regulation system or a nationwide reassessment of water prices or things like that, those things just aren't politically feasible right now. So that means that the tools that the government does have at its disposal are really making investments or bets on individual companies or individual technologies, some of which will succeed, some of which won't.
Okay, that actually didn't approach the question I asked, which
Okay.
was, why should the government invest in areas it doesn't know, private industry, rather than invest in areas where it does know things like education, where it has expertise? Isn't it a better approach for the government to invest in public goods, things that everyone can use, education? I happen to be a college professor, rather than making bets on individual companies.
I think it probably needs a mix of both. I think Cheeto would probably agree that with all of the training money in the world coming to LACCD, if there aren't companies to hire those trainees once they graduate from programs, then we've wasted a lot of money on very smart community college students. So I think you kind of need both of those investments. And I would posit that an investment from the government in a greenhouse gas regulation system is an investment in a public good. Fighting global warming helps improve the quality of life for all of us. Reducing air pollution helps improve the quality of life for everybody. So those are investments in public goods that can drive economic benefit without putting a bet on any particular company or technology.
Well, we'll take all the money. No, seriously. The fact of the matter is, there is this growing movement in the workforce development arena, that side of the higher education system. Basically, what that means is that it's not the traditional educational model anymore. We have to do a much better job in connecting with business and industry. With that, including that, is the push towards anteing up. We understand to play poker, you have to ante up. We have to do a much better job of finding those antes and making sure that we come to the table not just with an open hand asking for support, but come to the table with tangible and sometimes intangible resources that can defray the operational costs.
If I might add one other thing, another kind of global perspective on this, and some of you may agree with this or not depending on your politics, but other countries are doing this, other states are doing this. And if we choose not to, then that puts us in an uncompetitive position to develop those technologies. So again, coming back to Solyndra, one of the reasons that Solyndra failed is because Chinese solar companies benefit from significant subsidies. If our companies don't have the same opportunities and benefits from our government, then they're at a disadvantage. So that skews the market overall, but in the near term, that's kind of what we need to level the playing field.
I have to, I think, agree with the underlying assumption that you're making within your question. I don't think a bureaucracy can pick winners and losers in the private sector very well. I really don't. There have been instances where I'm wrong. The one that was always raised during my education was the jet engine, which really was the product of the federal government because of war developing the jet engine. That was directly something it went after doing. But in general, I think the record of government in terms of picking winners and losers amongst private companies is frankly pretty awful. What you're much better doing is working on the rules and through the rules encouraging activity. As we are doing it with solar. That's one that clearly seems to be working. So I think, but in terms of picking winners and losers, I'm a skeptic on that. Just because the bell-shaped curve applies to governmental officials as well as everybody else, and I don't think there's some greater knowledge about how to do that from the folks that make those decisions.
Other questions from the audience?
Hold on, I want to,
Oh,
one more comment. From the private sector side, we were offered some money by the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency through the City of Los Angeles, and we'd rather not take that money or any kind of government money, whether it be from the state or federal level, just because there are too many strings attached for the company. It's not a very smart, not an efficient way to run your business. What we'd rather have the government do is give the NSF money and help write the regulations and help set up the certification process, which will allow us and competitors that will come behind us to really move forward. I mean, we don't care about money from the government. We want to take our products to market. And if that means having the government fund the regulation and the certification process, do it full bore, hire the people you need, do what you need to do, but do it quickly.
To John's earlier point about the military being a driver for innovation, it's one thing we see in our company. We provide batteries for military vehicles and aircraft, and we've done a couple of demonstration projects where we actually hybridize a military Humvee. So these are military vehicles that started the war in Iraq without a lot of body armor or without a lot of electronics, but over the last 10 years have had all sorts of things bolted onto them, and now they weigh an extra 1,000 pounds. So they need better batteries to move them through. And there's also a military demand for batteries that can power these communication systems without running the engine, without using fuel, without creating a heat signature, without creating noise that would give away your position. It's essentially the same technology that we would use to prevent heavy-duty trucks from idling their main engine overnight to run their air conditioners when they're parked at a rest stop, or to help trucks that are queuing up at the port cut off their engine while they're waiting in line to pick up a cargo container. So in that sense, there are some very, very, very smart technical people in different government agencies that are making procurement decisions, and those can have spillover effects into the commercial market, just the way we saw with government investment developing the internet, GPS technology, and a whole host of other things.
I don't know if this is a question so much as a statement, but I agree with Alejandro. It's just extremely confusing or frustrating. What is defined as a green job? I mean, it sounds like what your company does and what your folks do is a green job, in recycling green job. But there's so many folks that will say, no, it's not, or yes, it is. It's kind of greenwashing, and I guess I'm just frustrated. I don't know who is the decider on what is a quote-unquote green job. So I don't know if that's a question so much as a statement that you want to probably ask about.
Well, we actually have, I know I said that, our plumbers are plumbers, our techs are plumbers, but we actually, one of our most senior technician, it was one of the first certified green plumbers in California. Whatever that means, I don't know. Whatever. We sent him to a class for 3 Saturdays in a row, and he became a green plumber. Does that help us any? No.
A good model I look to is where venture capitalists are going. There are a number of venture capital firms, even in Los Angeles, that are focused primarily on the green sector, and they don't pick green arbitrarily as, to your point, recycling or water control. They look at it more, what are the market drivers, and I think they rely on things. Where do scarce resources drive changing market dynamics? And those are technologies that will find more currency as we get, clean air becomes more scarce, clean energy becomes more scarce, things like that. So it's a little bit harder to define, and everyone has to choose their own. But I think that's ultimately where green jobs is referring to.
I think for me, it's infrastructure. It's infrastructure / behavioral. Okay, the individuals who work within a company is one factor. The fixtures within that company is another. You can have the best, technologies in the building, supposedly the green technologies, but if you can't have the individuals turn the lights off or whatever, it's not going to work. We at the community college system, we worked with major companies like the Metropolitan Transit Authority. We're 9,000 employees. We worked together to provide training, sustainability training to 300 of their workers, because their thought was, they need to become more efficient, and part of that efficiency is deployment and daily use of the green process, and that whole thing has to be adopted throughout the whole company. So they started with 300, and after our training series, a lot of them actually were starting to get exposed and increase the turning off the lights, etc. So we felt that our training series worked and helped to